For what it's worth, this happens to be a big moment. It's the first time I've worn my reading glasses when I put together my Idea of the Day video. Big deal, right? But that's kind of the subject of today's Idea of the Day. It seems to me that historians, and especially the media, are obsessed with firsts. I don't know where it all started, but I guess you might go back to, let's say, the first explorer to come across the Atlantic. All right, the first president, the first this, the first that. I think it's gotten a bit out of hand. I mean, not to diminish some of the firsts. I mean, the first man on the moon, the first man in space, the first American in space. I mean, really? Did we need to have both? I guess it makes us feel good. We had the first man in space who happened to be Russian, but that wasn't enough, so we had to have the first American in space. And of course, sooner or later, you had to have the first woman in space, the first Hispanic in space, the first Hispanic woman in space, the first... I mean, there are some firsts that truly do mean something. Jackie Robinson definitely broke the barrier in baseball. First African American. And more specifically, it broke a lot of other barriers. But the point is, I think we've gotten to the point where some of the firsts are a little bit of a stretch. First woman president, I guess, whenever that happens, is going to be a pretty big deal. But must we always break everything down that way? When you have the first woman on the Supreme Court, I believe that was Sandra Day O'Connor. Of course, I still remember that, but there it was. Now another woman comes along and she enters the Supreme Court, but they have to, well, she's the first Hispanic woman. And I guess that means they would have to have had somewhere a record of the first Hispanic man. There are too many versions of firsts, and I don't want to come off like a killjoy and saying, well, why don't we give her credit for being the first Hispanic woman on the court? Or why don't we give, let's say the first, I don't know, there's all these weird combinations. Why don't we give them their credit? Well, to be honest with you, I think that takes the focus away from what a true first is. And I think, for what it's worth, we should have reached a point where we no longer factor in somebody's ethnicity in any firsts anymore. It's played out way too much. Don't factor in gender either. You're the first person into space. You're the first person to do this or do that. I think by keeping those labels on things, it's feeding into the whole, I don't know, in my opinion, it makes the matter, it cheapens it in a way, and it takes away from that person's actual accomplishment. Why should somebody go down in history as being the first, let's say Indian, Native American who went into space? Do we need a record for that? It just seems like, that just draws attention to the fact that he's different. And of course, if she was a woman, it'd be the first Indian woman, Native American, into space. You understand where I'm going? It sort of draws the fact that there are these differences between the people. It makes the divide between gender and ethnicity and race and color and all these other things, and it underscores them instead of making it just like there's a person and they just did something. It's the first person to do it, and why factor in all that other stuff? Why draw attention to the fact that it is so rare for, let's say, a Native American to go into space whenever it happened? And for example, it may have already happened. And I'm sure if there was a Native American that went into space, it's in the record books for being the first Native American in space. But if you understand what I'm saying, I say, let's stop with all those firsts. Let's have first people, first person who did this, first person who did that. And let's stop underscoring what makes them, different from all other people. Let's see people as people and not for some other attribute. And that's today's Idea of the Day. All right, there it is. That's today's Idea of the Day. Some of them are pretty good, right? And some of them suck, I admit. First to admit, some of my ideas suck. But if you visit Idea of the Day every day and you subscribe to my channel, by looking at the subscribe link in the corner. You'll see a brand new idea every single day. And I promise you, some of them don't suck.